In this part of the episode, we're going to be talking about decimals as they relate to fractions. Both decimals and fractions give us ways to represent portions of a whole number. So, how can we take a fraction, which represents a certain portion of a whole number, and convert it to the corresponding decimal? Or how could we take a decimal, which represents a portion of a whole number, and rewrite it as the corresponding fraction? So first of all, let's talk about converting decimals to fractions. If I want to convert a decimal to a fraction, there are a couple of different ways to go about it. And way number one is to use the meaning of the different place values. For example, I'm thinking about the decimal number 0.51. What fraction would correspond to this decimal? I would use the fact that in the decimal number 0.51, the digit 5 is telling me that I have 5 tenths, and I also have 1/100th. In other words, I have 5 of 1/10, and I have 1 of 1/100th. If I just use the knowledge that I have about how to add and multiply together different fractions, then that'll give me a way to express this decimal number as a fraction. So, for example, if I use PEMDAS and complete these two multiplications first, if I want to do 5 times 1 over 10, I can do 5 over 1 times 1 over 10, and I can think about that as 5 over 10. If I want to do 1 times 1 over 100, well, multiplying by 1 doesn't change a number ever. So that's still just going to be 1 over 100. Now, if I want to add these two numbers together, then all I have to do is make them have the same denominator and then add the two numerators together. And if I want to get the denominators to match, then one option is to multiply the first denominator by 10, and 10 times 10 will become 100. So that turns the numerator into 50, that turns the denominator into 100, and so I have 50 and 1 over 100. If I then add these two numerators together over the common denominator, I have 51 over 100. That would be the decimal number 0.51 expressed as a fraction. Now, this was a pretty lengthy process. So let me give you an alternative way to complete this process that is a little bit faster. Now, notice something interesting here. The difference between 51 and 0.51 is that you can get 51 by moving this decimal place 2 units to the right. I've moved the decimal place 2 units to the right to get 51, and I've ended up in this fraction in the denominator with a 1 with 2 zeros. Using this idea and following this pattern, we can convert decimals to fractions really quickly. Move the decimal point to the right until you have a whole number. Then put that number over 1 with zeros, where the number of zeros matches the number of times your decimal point moved to the right. Let me show you specifically what I mean in a couple of additional examples. Somebody says, I'm thinking of the decimal number 3.012. If I wanted to change this decimal number into a whole number, I would have to move the decimal point 1, 2, 3 spaces to the right. So to convert this decimal to a fraction, I'm going to take 3012, that whole number, and I'm going to put it over 1 with 3 zeros. 1, 0, 0, 0. And that would be this decimal number expressed as a fraction instead. If I wanted to convert this number, 0.00001, to a fraction, first I would think about moving that decimal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places to the right. Moving it 5 places to the right will now give me just the whole number 1 unit. If I take 1 unit and I put it over 1 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros, then this fraction will be equivalent to this decimal number. They will represent the same amount. And if I wanted to convert 0.24 to a fraction, then I would move that decimal place 2 spaces to the right, and then I would put the whole number 24 over 1 with 2 zeros. 24 over 100. If I started with a fraction and I wanted to change that to a decimal, what would I do? Fortunately, in my opinion, converting a fraction to a decimal is even easier than converting a decimal to a fraction. If you want to convert a decimal to a fraction, for example, if I wanted to convert 1 over 2, the fraction 1/2, to a decimal, all I have to do is divide, for example, in a calculator, the numerator by the denominator. Fractions are just division, so to convert a fraction to a decimal, all that you have to do is do the division. For example, here, if I wanted to convert 1 over 2 to a decimal number, I would just take my numerator 1 and divide it by 2 in a calculator, and the result of that calculation would be 0.5. So, if somebody said, convert 1/3 to a decimal number, all I would have to do is go into my calculator and do 1 divided by 3. And I can see that this calculator has provided me with 0.333333333, just repeating basically an infinite number of threes. Now, this is a lot to write. So the question says, if necessary, round the result to 3 decimal places. So to round this number, I'm going to go into the number and I'm going to identify the 3rd decimal place, and then I'm going to look at the digit directly to the right of that. This digit is pretty small because it's only 3, so I'm just going to delete all of these values to the right of the 3rd decimal place, and I'm going to write my final answer as 0.333. If I wanted to convert 2/5 to a decimal number, I can just do 2 divided by 5. And this is a nice short number already, so all I have to do is write down 0.4. And if I wanted to convert 4/7 to a decimal number, I just have to do 4 divided by 7 in the calculator, and I get this nonsense here, huge repeating pattern. So I will round this to 3 decimal places. I'll look at the 3rd decimal place, and I'll look at the number directly to the right of that, and the number directly to the right of that is 4. a relatively small value. So all I have to do is delete all of these numbers, and I get 0.571.